Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to Sail Out for Good, Eidólon Yacht! Exclamation point. This is the first poem of the 31 of Goodbye My Fancy, that second annex, the very final poems, as we are now counting down towards the very last poem of Leaves of Grass. It's interesting that Whitman, who grew up on the land, never really on a boat, spends so much of his time imagining his life as defined by being on a boat, right? It's fascinating, because he grew up, of course, as we've said, carpenter work, and then, of course, as a journalist and a teacher and all of that. But he loves this imagery of sailing, and he loves to use it now so much in these final two annexes as he's talking, as we said in our Stanza 70 discussion, how much he enjoys this idea of sailing. Now, the use of the word Eidólon, and I love this about Leaves of Grass, takes us all the way back to the very beginning, and there's where we will begin for our assumptions. Our assumptions, so that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist. And then you were with us from that very first set of introductory poems, inscriptions, which Eidolon's was one of those. We also gave a set of introductory comments to this annex of Goodbye My Fancy, and I'm hopeful that you have as well been exposed to that. Now, our background information will be of use to us here, and we'll begin in our Nortons. We'll begin, first of all, by telling us that this poem was first published in Lippincott's magazine of March 1891, together with three other poems, Sounds of the Winter, The Unexpressed, and After the Argument, all under the general title of Old Age Echoes. And there, in fact, was a deleted title for this poem, Old Age Recitatives. Now, to go back to our Nortons with the poem Eidolons, we'll remember that Whitman will employ this word Eidolons as a refrain to express the concept central in Leaves of Grass, that behind all appearance is soul, the ultimate reality, eternal and changeless. That is to say, Eidolons is this idea of the substrata of the world, that is to say, soul, the spirit or soul of the world. And of course, he uses words like cosmos and others to play the same game. We're familiar with this. Now, you'll remember from the idea of Sail Out for Good, Eidólon Yacht, you'll remember that in Cabin Ships at Sea, we will hear this idea of sailing for the very first time. By the way, this is the only time in any title in Leaves of Grass that the word sail gets used. For good, you'll remember in Song of Myself, Passage 1. I think there's intentionally, a lot of Whitman returning back to earlier poems in Leaves of Grass in this final annex, which is why I've argued we really need to spend quality time with each one of these poems as well. By the way, yacht gets used only one time in Leaves of Grass, and it's here. Heave the anchor short, raise mainsail and jib, steer forth. Obviously reminding us of Passage to India, no question. Oh, little white-hulled sloop. I love that he uses the adjective little. Now, speed on really deep waters. Do you remember in Song of Myself 46 that he says, I want you to go out into the midst of the sea, rise, laughingly dash with your hair, rise and wave to me. Notice, we're going out into the deep waters now. And then in parenthetics, he'll say it this way, I will not call it our concluding voyage, but outset and sure entrance to the truest, best, maturest, notice his trinities, his threes, that he'll continue at the end of Leaves of Grass. We see more and more of these trinities. And then again, the parenthetic closing. In other words, he goes back to Plato's Phaedo. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. There is Socrates, ready to drink his hemlock shake. He's going to die in 399 BCE. He is giddy with excitement, as one would be ready to take a journey or a voyage. Of course, his students are all in tears, and he can't understand why. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're about to drink hemlock. And he's like, well, yeah, but there's this thing called the soul, Eidolons. There's this thing called the soul that allows me to consider the possibility, at least, of another journey. Come on. Dude, you haven't met any 200-year-old people. Clearly, I had to die at some point. I had to go on this journey. And he says, I'm not going to call it a concluding voyage, however, right? And then notice truest, best, maturest. And then depart from solid earth. Now we're going from the land to the water, right? No more returning to these shores. Makes us immediately think of Yeats' sailing to Byzantium. That is no country for old men. Now, on for aye, our infinite free venture winding. And it's almost as if he wants us to go back, which obviously we're very happy to do, and to work with those opening lines of Song of the Open Road. Afoot and light-hearted I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me leading, wherever I choose. You'll remember he calls it his delicious burdens, his old delicious burdens. He says, now on for aye, our infinite free venturing wending, spurning all yet tried ports. You'll remember this from Song of Myself, passage 1, creeds and schools and abeyance, spurning all yet tried ports, seas, hawsers, densities, gravitation. In other words, I'm not interested in the older stuff anymore, the stuff I already know. I'm interested in the new stuff that I'm about to find out. And then the title, of course, of the poem, Sail Out for Good, Eidólon Yacht of Me. By the way, notice the construction of two exclamation points, one at the end of the first line and then obviously the last line. What are we going to say at 2a about a poem like this? Well, I think the argument that Whitman is making is we should all be excited for every journey, every concluding voyage of our lives, obviously our own passing. It's a fun odyssey, it's an exciting odyssey, and it shouldn't be something to be feared or dreaded. Obviously, Emily Dickinson played similar games, as we've commented elsewhere. At 2b, I love that he begins and ends with exclamation points. It's this being the first of the poems of the 31 of Goodbye My Fancy cluster, right? At 3a, I mentioned Yeats' sailing to Byzantium, 1928 offering. I think there is a lot of Whitman in Yeats, and certainly I think this poem works well. Finally, at 3b, what do you think about the idea of the concluding voyage? And to what degree do you feel like reading Leaves of Grass is helping you to prepare? I certainly hope that that's the case. Thank you.